In this example, we're going to look at some of the powerful tools that enable us to edit clip art in Aspire. We're going to take 3 pieces of clip art that comes with this software, and we're going to look at how easily we can edit them to create a brand new model. So let's go to File, we'll close that, and then we'll go and create a new file. So in here we're going to put in some dimensions. So for my width I'm going to put in a value of 48, the height of that is going to be 6 inches. We're going to put Z0 off the top of the block, material thickness that we're working with is going to be 1 inch. XY datum position will be in the centre of my job. Working in inches, modelling resolution I'm going to up that to very high so that we have more pixels to play with as we're working with quite a large job space. And then we'll go ahead and press OK. So to begin this project we're going to start by importing the free clip art that comes with the software. We're going to roughly lay them out, and then we're going to look at the transformation tools to size and position those components until we're happy with a rough layout. So let's go into the 2D view control. We're going to use this option over here to tile our windows horizontally. That way I can see the 2D view at the top and I can see the 3D view at the bottom. So now we're ready to go and import our first piece of clip art. So let's go into the modelling tab. So there's a few ways that we can import clip art. One way is by using the import option up here and locating the required model from your PC. So let's use that option there. You can see that we're in the Mantle Assembly Files folder, and so I'm going to look at bringing in Flourish 118.57620. So let's take that and then we'll press open. You can see that's been imported into our job. So we'll take that and we're just going to put that in the centre of our material. So we'll align that to the centre horizontally and vertically to the material, then we can close that down. You can see that my component's been added to the component tree there. Another way that we could bring clip art into our session is by using the clip art tab. So if I just select the clip art tab there, what I've done is I've already installed all of the clip art that comes with the software, and using the library browser option here and using this add folder option, I've added in all of those subfolders that are available with the software, and so I can just click through those and just easily browse through the clip art, looking at the thumbnails in the lower half of the clip art tab. There's another way that you could look for your files. You could go and browse through your PC, through your local files, and search for files in here. Now I'm going to go and use the library browser. So I've got all my folders ordered here. So I'm going to go into the decorative subfolder here. And then we're just going to browse through until I find a piece of clip art that I like the look of. I'm just going to go through. Okay, so I like this one. So I could just double click that and that will automatically put that in the centre. So I could just move that out if I wanted to. And then if we keep looking through, we could find another piece of clip art. So I like this one here. And not only can we just double click clip art to bring that into our session, we can just drag it in either into the 2D view or straight into the 3D view. Okay, so I've got the 3 pieces of clip art that I'd like to use. So let's go into the modelling tab, and now we'll look at using the transformation tools to alter the sizes and positions of those components until we're happy with a layout. Now before we start to lay out our components, I'm just going to rename them all just so it's easier for me to refer to. So I'm going to right mouse click on Flourish 73 here. I'm going to rename that. We're just going to call that one A. I'm going to select this one, right mouse click, rename that one, call that one B. Select this one, right mouse click, rename that. We're going to call that one Centre, so it's just easy for me to refer to. So now we're ready to go ahead and create our rough layout. So we're going to look at the transform objects tools. We're going to look at sizing them, moving them, rotating them, mirroring them or flipping components until we're happy with a rough layout. And I am going to work with just the left hand side of our job here, as what I ultimately would like to do is create my left side, and then as part of the finishing process I'm just going to take the components that we have on the left side and then look at mirroring those onto the right. So it's all about just working with as much as you need to. So I only need to work with one side if I'm going to create a mirrored copy on the other. So we'll start by looking at this component here, the center component. So with that selected, let's go over and alter the size of that. So let's go to Set Selected Object Size, and in here we're going to look at giving that a height of 4.8. Let's type that in, 4.8, press apply. I want to make sure link XY is checked so that it scales up in proportion. Go ahead, press apply, we can see that's been updated there. So I'm happy with that. I can stay in the set size form and then select my next component. So it's this one here, the B component. And again, I'd like to increase the height of this also. So let's go and change the height of that. I'm going to make that 3.5. Link XY is checked again, so let's press apply here. You can see that's been altered, so let's just close that. So now with that component selected, what I'd like to do is flip that horizontally. So with that selected, let's go over to Mirror Selected Objects, and then we're going to use this option here to flip horizontal. I want to make sure that Flip About Job Center and Create a Mirrored Copy are unchecked. So we're going to use that option here, Flip Horizontal. You can see that's been updated straight away. Let's close that down. I'm just going to take that and just move that out the way for the time being. To help me see what's going on a little bit better, I'm just going to use this option here, the zoom box. I'm just going to draw in a box around the area that I'd like to zoom in on. Then I'm going to right click to come out of that. Then in the 3D view, I'm just going to use the scroller of my mouse to zoom in where I'm pushing the scroller away from me. That way I can see better what's going on in the 3D view. So I'm going to take this component and I'm just going to roughly position that in place. I want to move that up a little bit. I think I'm happy with that. And so the idea here is where our flourish starts in the centre, you can see that we have a flourish coming up and it's coming down here. And then it's going to join into this flourish here, where this flourish starts at the bottom and it's going to come up and then it's going to come down again. And so we want to just keep this flow going, this wavy flow. I might just want to push that in a little bit more, so I'll just nudge that over just a little bit and then maybe bring that down also. That's a bit too much. Okay, so I think that's okay, so I'm happy with that. So we could go and move on and think about this flourish over here. And so to continue that flow, I need to look at rotating this component. So with that selected, let's go over to Rotate Selected Objects. And here I'm going to make sure that my pivot point is in the center of the component, so it's rotating about the center point here. And then I'm going to specify an angle, we'll put in 90 degrees, press apply, we can close that down, you can see that's been altered. Then I can take that and move that across. Again, going back to that flow, so starting at the top, coming down, back up again, back down. You can see it's quite disruptive here, so I think it would look better if we flipped this vertical instead. So with that selected, let's go over to Transform Objects. We're going to mirror that. Again, uncheck Flip About Job Center, uncheck Create a Mirrored Copy. This time we're going to flip vertical, close that down, and then I'm just going to dynamically alter this by using the rotation handles and then look at roughly positioning that in place. Might want to bring that down just a little bit more. A little bit more there. So I may just want to nudge that over a little bit more and then maybe look at rotating that again. Okay, so it's just tweaking with your design until you're happy with that layout. And so let's just zoom out a little to take a look at what we've got there. We'll have a look in the 3D view also. So we can see there that I think I'm happy with that rough layout. And so now we can start to think about altering the overall silhouette of the part. I'm not worried about the heights at this stage where the components are overlapping each other. I'll look at that once we've got our exact layout. Now, to help me see the part a little bit better, I think it would be a good idea for me to set all of my components combine modes to merge. So I'm going to select A, I'm going to hold down Shift, then select the center, I'm going to right mouse click, use the option here, combine mode, I'm going to set them all to merge with each other. So that makes it easier for me to view my overall composite model when they're all blending in with each other. Now, we spoke about the flow earlier. Remember, we're going from the top here, and we can see the flourishes coming down, then it's picking back up in the second component and coming down again, and then it's coming down and back up here, except we have this area on our A flourish, this swirl area here, that's quite disruptive of that flow there. So I'm going to look at removing that. Now, to do that, I could go in and draw a vector and use the option here to clear area of selected component inside or outside of a component. But I'm going to use an easy option, and that's using the sculpting tools. So I'm going to go and take that component there. I'm going to go into the sculpting tools here. Okay, so you can see we've got our component, and I need to look at just removing this area here so that we have that nice flow between the two components. Now, to help me see the area that I need to remove within the sculpting tools, I'm going to use this option here to show grayscale background. And so that enables me to see almost like a shadow of all of the other components that we have within our job. So it makes it easier for me to see where I can remove parts of my component. So I'm just going to help us out by going into the twiddle view here, and then using the scroll of my mouse I'm just going to zoom in, and then using Control I'm just going to pan that view across. I'm going to use the undo brush option here, so you can see that now we can see the shadow of the other components. We know exactly where we can cut into. So I'm just going to reduce the diameter there, and then holding down Shift I'm just going to click, and you can see that's removing that for us. So I'm just going to take that off. We can see that that will have cleared the area that's visible up here. Okay, so I'm happy with that, so we'll go ahead and press keep, and then we can go and OK that, and we can see that's removed all of that swirl area here, and so we now have a nice flow running between the two. Okay, so let's just pop that in Z, then we'll go up into the 2D view, and then just zoom out a little there also. So let's take a look at the overall layout. Now, it's not too bad, however this end area here looks rather plain in comparison to the rest of the design. Now, it's quite typical of designs to have repeated elements thrown in, so I think to really finish off this layout it could be a good idea to take areas of this component, particularly this flourish area here, take a copy of that and put that on the end of our flourish here, just to really set that off. Not only will that set that off, it will just echo elements of the existing design. So to do that we need to draw a vector that represents that area that we'd like to take. So I'm just going to go into the 2D view, I'm just going to zoom in on that area. Okay, so it's this section here that I'd like. So if we go into the drawing tab, I'm just going to use the option to draw a polyline. I'm just going to start here, roughly draw in an area that represents the area I'd like to copy. Okay, then we'll just join those up. Right mouse click to come out of that. I'm going to select that vector, then we're going to go into the node editing options. So if I just zoom in there, and I can really take control of this vector here. A right mouse click here, I'm just going to Bezier that span there, and that will enable me to pull on the control handles to change the shape of that span. And we'll just pull that one out over there. Just make sure that this node isn't cutting into this area, and there we go, we have my vector that I'd like to use to crop our component to. I'm just going to press F on the keyboard to fit that to the screen. Now before I crop this component, I must make sure that I create a copy of this. So if that's selected, I'm going to go and right mouse click and use the option to copy there. With that selected, let's go and hold down Shift, select that vector, let's go into the Modeling tab. We're going to use the option to clear area of selected component outside of the selected vector. So it's going to remove everything outside of the vector that we just created there. So I use that option, you can see that's done that there. I'm going to take that vector, I'm just going to delete that as I don't need that anymore. I'm going to take this component here, I'm just going to roughly move that over for the time being, and then click into the white space, right mouse click, and use the option to paste in my center component. Okay, so if we just move our 3D view over there, we can see we've got our component here, we've got the grayscale, and we can see that's been added to the component tree. Now, so that I don't get confused, I'm just going to rename this new component. I'm going to right mouse click, rename that, and I'm just going to call that End Flourish. Okay. And then I can go and position that in place. So let's just zoom in on the 2D view and then just zoom in a little on the 3D view there. I'm going to take that, I'm going to select the center to make that my pivot point for when I rotate that manually. So if I take one of these handles and rotate that, you can see it's done that there. If I wanted to, I could do this in the 3D view and then manually position that in place. Okay, I think I'd like to alter the size of that, so let's go to Set Selected Object Size. I'm just going to change the height of that and make that 2.5, press Apply, and then close that down. I'm just going to pop that in Z and then zoom in again, and just pan my view across just so I can see that a little bit better. I'm going to take that and then roughly position that in place. If I wanted to, I could go and rotate that again. And then bring that out. Okay, so I'm happy with that. Let's just put that back in Z there. So now that I have my exact layout or silhouette, I can move on and start thinking about the heights of each of those components and ensure that where components overlap each other, they are either in front, behind, or blending into one another. So I'm going to go and maximize the 3D view to do this. And then just using the scroller of my mouse, I'm just going to zoom in slightly. Then using Control, I'm just going to pan that view across and then zoom in again. So I'll start center out. So I'll start with the center component. So I'm going to select that again to put that into transform mode. You'll notice there is this blue node option here, and if I click on that, that will bring up the short properties form. Okay, so you can see some information about that component. It's telling me its current shape height. Now I'd like to increase that to 0.45, and I'll use the space bar to update that. We can see that's been updated there. Okay, so now I can move on to the next component. So I'm just going to select that component there. And I'd also like to increase the overall shape height of this to be 0.4. Okay, then we'll spacebar that to enter that in. I can see here in this area, if I just zoom in, ideally what I would like is this swirl area to look as though it's sat underneath the center component here. Now I could look at applying a fade, where I could fade the entire component from the left to the right hand side. However, I would like to retain the detail within all of this area here. So for me to get a better control of the height difference there, I could look at splitting the component, so we're just breaking this area here, so I have two separate components, so that I could keep the component height of this to 0.4, and then I could look at just decreasing the height of this component so that it's sat underneath the central component. So let's close that down, and we'll go to Edit, Undo Scale Component Height, and then we'll go and tile our windows. And we'll just zoom in there, go into the drawing tab, we need to draw a vector that represents the area we'd like to split. So I'm going to go and draw a polyline, I'm just going to quickly sketch in the area that I'd like to split. And we'll close that down. Okay, if I just zoom out slightly, we can go and select that component, hold down Shift to select that vector. Let's go into the Modeling tab. I'm going to use this option here to split the selected component using a vector. Okay, so I can take that vector now, just using delete on the keyboard. I'm going to delete that, and we can see that we have 1, 2 components there. You can see that they're also represented there in the component tree. We have a BA and a BB. So to help myself, let's go and rename those. So we're going to right mouse click, rename this one. We're just going to keep that as B. I'm going to take the BA, right mouse click, rename that, and we're going to call this one Swirl. Okay, so then we can go back and maximize the 3D view. And then if I just zoom in and pan my view across, we can go and alter those heights again. So I'm going to go and take that swirl, select that again to put it into transform mode, use this option here to bring up that short properties form, and then we could look at decreasing that. So let's try 0.15, and we'll press spacebar to enter that in. I want to zoom in on the 3D view so we can see that better. Okay, so you can see now that 0.15, it's sitting completely underneath our center component. So our central component is proud in front of that swirl. So I'm satisfied with that. So let's move on to this component here. So I'll select that one, zoom out a little just so we can see how it looks against our center component. Then we're going to go and change the shape height of this one. So let's bring that up to 0.4, press space to enter that in. We can see that that's emphasised the detail in our B component. Let's just close that form down. I'm just going to click into the space and then using Control, I'm just going to pan my view across. Then we'll look at altering this component here, our A component. So I'll select that, and then select that again. We're going to go into the properties form here, so I'm just going to drag that out the way again. Okay, so you can see that our current shape height is just over 0.2, so let's alter that and make that 0.4 so it matches the other components' heights. Okay, so you can see again that's really emphasised the detail within that component. However, if we take a look on the right hand side here, we can see that that component is starting to show through the B component. Now we want this to sit underneath or behind the B component, so we need to look at reducing the height of our A component. Now we could do that by reducing the overall shape height, or we could just look at specifying an area that we'd like to fade. And so what we could do is look at fading the component from the left hand side to the right hand side, so only the right hand side is reduced. So if we use the fade option here, which is this one, so if we just check that, we can see now that I'm able to set an anchor point. So if I use the set option, and you'll notice that the cursor has now changed to an anchor and it has the number 1 next to it. So it's telling me that we need to set our first anchor point. So this is the point or the side of the component that you'd like to remain at 0.4 at its current shape height. So we're going to go from the left, so I'm going to click on the left hand side, and you'll see now we have an anchor with a number 2 next to it, so that's where we need to set our second anchor point. So this is the area or the direction that you'd like to fade that component. So I'm going to click on the right hand side as I want to fade from the left to the right, so I'm going to click on the right hand side, and we can see that that's done that at a default of 50%, and if we take a look at that, we can see that that's now sat underneath our B component. So I'm happy with that. So let's go and take a look at the last component, which is our end flourish here. And we'll just increase the shape height of that ever so slightly. We'll just bring that up to 0.275 and press space to enter that in. Okay, so I'm happy with that. Again, if we just zoom in and take a look at that, we can see here that it's still protruding through the A component. Now, rather than me reducing the height of this or even applying the fade, what I'd like to do is retain all of the components' shape height. So I'm going to look at actually blending this component with the A component using the sculpting tools to remove that. So that way I can still keep all of the height within this flourish here. So let's just close that down and put that in Z. And then we'll go and hold down Shift and select this component also. I'm going to go into the sculpting tools. So it's going to warn me that we must bake this component before we edit that. I'm happy to do that, so I'm going to press OK to continue. Go to OK. I'm just going to go into number 6, the twiddle view, and then holding down Control, I'm just going to pan my view, and then using the scroller of my mouse, I'm just going to zoom in. Okay, so all I'd like to do is just blend in this area here. So to begin with, we'll start with the smooth tool. So we'll go with a diameter of around 30, strength 30, and all I'd like to do is just blend the two areas together just to remove this harsh line here. So we'll just do that by just clicking, and then I'm just going to hold my mouse down and run that across, back and forth. You can see that's now blending the two together. Okay, so you can see that's already made a big improvement there. If I wanted to, I could go and use the smudge tools, and I'll just bring the diameter up a little to around 40, strength around 60, and then I could look at just pushing the material out a little at the top there, just to give that more of a defined curve area here. And then if I wanted to, I could just pull this part of the flourish out just to bring that out a little more. I'm going to go back into the smooth, just reduce the diameter, and then just run over the bottom area here. We can see that's now blended together, and I'm happy with that. So let's go and press keep, and then we can OK that. So let's just pan that across and zoom out a little so we can take a look at that as a whole. That's not too bad. However, I think we could benefit from maybe applying a tilt to this component from the right hand side to the left, just to balance that out. So we'll go and select that again, and let's just select the properties option. We'll just move that out the way. I'm going to use the tilt option. So we're going to use tilt. Now we can set our anchor, so we'll use the set option here. Okay, so we need to set our first anchor point. So we're going to go from the right hand side. As we want the right hand side to remain the same, we just want to lift up the left hand side. So we're going to set our first anchor point by clicking on the right hand side there, and you can see that the anchor has now got a number 2 next to it, so we need to set our second anchor point, which I need to be on the left hand side. So I'm going to click here, and then we need to choose how much of a tilt we want on that. Okay, so that's 0.4, we can maybe lift that up a little. Let's try 1 degree. Okay, so that seems to have balanced everything out a little bit better now. Let's just make sure that we're not coming into the B component. We can see that there, it's still sat underneath here, so I'm happy with that. So we'll just close that down, and then let's have a look at that in the Z view. So we're now at the stage where all of the overlapping areas have the correct heights, where we looked at how using the tilt and fade options and how we could alter the shape height of the components allowed us to create the look that one component is in front or behind the other. So all we need to do now is look at finishing the part, and it's really quite minimal in this example, as we only need to look at mirroring the left hand side to go onto the right hand side. So I'm going to go and select all of the left hand side components. I'm just going to hold down Shift and just click and select those. You can see we've got that section selected. Now looking at that, I think it could work as a standalone piece of clip art. So before I go ahead and mirror that, I'm just going to right mouse click and use the option to group them. I'm going to go and rename that group by right mouse clicking, use the rename option. We're just going to call that left flourish. And with that left flourish, I'm going to take that, I'm going to right mouse click, and then I'm going to use the option to export as a piece of 3D clip art. Now exporting this as a piece of clip art will allow me to import this into another session of Aspire, and it will still retain all of the individual components. So this means that I've added a brand new piece of clip art to my library of models, and I could look at ungrouping them if I wanted to use the individual components. So we'll go and export that as a piece of 3D clip art. We'll just keep the name Left Flourish, and we'll add that to our project folder, press save, and I can easily access that later on. Now with that selected, let's go over to Mirror Selected Objects. Okay, we'd like to flip that about the job center. We'd also like to create a mirrored copy. Then we're going to go and flip that horizontally. Okay, so you can see it's done that there. So let's just close that down. So let's just rename that component, right mouse click, rename that. I'm just going to call that Right Flourish. Okay, and so as a final thing that I'd like to do is I'd like to take all of those by holding down Shift and selecting those. And I'm just going to go and change the size of that just to really fill out the space that we've got available. So we'll go to Set Selected Object Size. I'm going to go and give that a height of 5.5. Make sure Link XY is checked so it scales up in proportion. Then we'll go and press Apply, and then we can go and close that down. With all of those selected, I'm just going to group them. So let's right mouse click, group, and we'll rename that group. So right mouse click again, go to rename. I'm just going to call that Mantle. And then with that component, I'm going to take that, right mouse click again, and I'm going to use the Export as 3D clip art as I have a brand new piece of clip art. So let's go and save that out as a piece of clip art. We're going to add that to our project folder. We're just going to call that Mantle, and then press save. And it's really a good idea to get into the habit of exporting models that you make or edit, as it's a quick way of adding to your own collection of models. And then using the Clip Art tab, if we just go into the Clip Art tab, and if we go and browse our local files, we're going to find that project folder, so Mantle Assembly, and if we go to the files, we can see that they've instantly been updated there, and we have access to all the folders that we can easily see within our Clip Art tab. And so that really completes this tutorial, where we've looked at some of the powerful tools in Aspire that enables us to take existing models and edit them to create brand new ones. And in this particular example, we took 3 pieces of clip art that comes with this software, we roughly laid them out, we then looked at some of the tools in order for us to create the exact silhouette. We then looked at ways that we can alter the component's height so that the overlapping areas are either in front, behind, or blending into one another. And then we finished the part off by simply mirroring the part. And you can see that just by using those 3 pieces of clip art, we've created a rather complex model. So let's go and save that file. So go to File, Save As. In the project folder, we're going to call that Mantle Assembly. And then we'll press Save. Then you can access that from the project folder.